Hi, I'm Adrito. I'm a computer science PhD student in the tech group, so I suppose I bring the tech to the tech. My research is predominantly on using AI to assist the neurosurgeons during their surgery, or more specifically, using computer vision to aid the neurosurgeon during endoscopic pituitary surgery. So back to front, that pituitary gland is a pea-sized gland found just off the base of the brain. When tumors grow on it, one approach that the neurosurgeons take is by entering through the nose. To do this, they require a specialized camera called an endoscope, which is effectively just a long tube with a camera stuck at the end. And I take the videos from this surgery and train various models to try and help the surgeons. So, for example, we can track the instruments and see whether they come too close to the critical structures, such as the carotid arteries or the optic nerves, which ideally the surgeons don't tamper with, and this can improve patient safety. We can also detect with the model what is happening during the surgery. So say at the end, it can automatically write the operation notes, and this can potentially save time as well with the surgeons. Before I started this PhD, I had no clinical background. It was entirely in maths and computer science. So over the past 4 years while doing this PhD, I've learned a lot, attended some of the surgeries at Queen Square itself, learned a lot from my supervisor, Hani, and the other neurosurgeon colleagues that we have, especially with Dan Khan. There has been a barrier, obviously the clinical side I've had to learn a lot about, and just more specifically how things work in the NHS, gaining consent to collect the various bits of data that we require from the patients, and just the nuances of how to develop things that are both interesting on the computer science side, but also actually helpful for the patients themselves. A lot of the more computer science heavy topics are to do with, for example, detecting what's happening in a certain clip in the video. And this is quite a challenging problem in wider computer science, which is still relatively unsolved. But on the clinical side, it doesn't matter too much whether the model can say exactly what's happening now, but more it has to prompt the surgeon on things that they could get wrong themselves rather than give a more generic description. The models are still probabilistic, so they're not going to ever be 100% accurate. And we're not attempting to replace the surgeons themselves. It's simply to prompt them to look into certain areas more specifically. For example, the carotid artery we believe, or the model believes, is here. Does the surgeon also think that the carotid artery is also here?
What's the hardest thing about working with neurosurgeons?
As politically correct as I can be, in Queen Square, it's been brilliant, no issues. It's more, I think, the adoption of AI technologies in the wider community is going to be challenging. Collecting videos from outside of Queen Square, for example, neurosurgeons aren't often willing to give us their videos so we can train on a much wider data set. And it's understandable if something goes wrong in the surgery, or that video is leaked to the general public, or something that can go wrong, then they're responsible for it. So it's understandable. And also, perhaps it's a general neurosurgeon thing that people have very specific ways of doing things, and these surgeons might have been doing this type of surgery for 30, 40 years at this point. It generally comes down to extracting as much data as we can from as many centers and hospitals and surgeons as possible, because every surgeon has a slightly different way of doing things. Every country has a slightly different way of doing things. Even within a country, the different hospitals have a way of doing things. And we've collected some data from the US with some collaborators, and some data from Spain, for example, and it is developing, but the model can't be specific to one type of surgery, because in 20 years things might change as well, and the model has to adapt to that.
Unless things change, there can't be any more innovation. Like, what's the logical end point of all of that?
Assuming we get this incredible data set, and computer science is obviously developing as well, AI is developing, we're creating better and better models every year. And if we hit this critical point where effectively it can do the surgery on its own, or the human just is told exactly what to do, then hopefully it means that we can just have more surgeries. I think that's the ideal case, where you can be a junior neurosurgeon. Now it takes 8 years, for example, to become a consultant. Maybe it becomes a shorter period of time, or junior surgeons have more responsibility and can do the surgery themselves. This frees up time and money for the NHS and other healthcare systems. So some surgeries are already done by robots. For example, laparoscopic cholecystectomy is famously done by the Da Vinci, which is a big robot. So robotic surgery does already exist. The problem is with endonasal surgery, the nostril is very small, and so the robots have not yet been built for that, but companies are working on it. When I started in tech, I was the only junior computer science. There was one senior computer science, my supervisor, Professor Stoyanov, and 3 of the other clinicians, and the group has massively grown since then. I think we have about 25 members now. And it's been really fun to see the group grow and face all the various challenges and solve a lot of the interesting tasks that they're doing. And my main thing that if I were to start again is to try and be a little bit more involved in the other projects outside of pituitary surgery, although saying that now, it might have been a bit difficult at the start to spend more time and not complete my PhD in the time allotted. The one thing you have to know is when you're working with clinicians that their time is incredibly valuable. They're doing 100 different things, whereas you're mainly just sitting on the computer and training models. So the few hours you have a week with them, make sure that they are valuable to both you and to them, and you have it all ready to take advantage of their limited time.